Yeah, well, we're taking the show on the road. We're going to take it on the road. Hey, everyone, welcome back to another week here on the Regulators. Myself, Dave, a.k.a. The Gypsy, and, of course, Terry Van Horn, SEOpros.org, SEO Dojo. How's it going this week, Terry?
Good, Dave.
Excellent. We have weather finally here in Canada. Yay, not that we know because we don't leave the house. Steve Garrett, or Steve Driven Media with a close-up there, just because we always wanted a close-up.
Hello.
Who is your new sponsor back there? We're not sure. Did we get a sponsor? Oh, they manufacture bodies.
Sorry, that's the schematics for the USS Tennessee from StrikeModels.com.
StrikeModels.com. Wow, I like it. A new sponsor on the show.
Radio-controlled combat on the water with boats.
Wow, I've seen some of those, dude. Looks really cool, actually. So, yes, folks, anyone else interested in sponsoring the SEO Training Dojo's Regulators, feel free to contact Steve and get his PayPal information. All right, boys. I guess, where do we start? Well, you did say you had something you were saving for the show, Steve. I know that. I did. Do we want to touch Mobilegeddon before we go?
Sure, let's do Mobilegeddon.
I felt we had to. You know what I mean? The folks do count on us and our opinions. So is it Mobilegeddon? Is this the next Panda, Penguin, or is this really something that businesses probably should have been doing a couple of years ago, and it's just time to catch up?
It's the next speed test. Speed is a ranking factor.
It should have always been on your radar, and it should have been something that was driven by your analytics and not by Google.
Yeah.
If you were seeing more and more of your traffic coming from mobile and you did not improve your website for those users, you were leaving an awful lot of coin on the table.
And I think that's always been the way I look at it, Steve, is I go to the analytics. You know what I mean? If 80-90% is still desktop and mobile, which folks is and tablets, if that's 10% or something, then it comes up on the radar at that level. 10%. If 50%, then it's something we should be worried about. But I'm with you. I don't think it's something that people should have been freaking out about the last 3 months or whenever it's been since Google announced it about fixing if it was required. If it's something that you should be fixing based upon your data. So.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the misconceptions out there is that if the page doesn't pass, it's not going to be in the index. That's a myth. That's
right.
Not
it's
true.
Just it's a dampener, right, Terry? You were talking to John Mueller about this?
I don't know how much I can say, but I was talking to someone worth listening to. I can't remember if it was public when we spoke. I believe we were in private.
Right, gotcha.
It was someone worth listening to.
Well, I already mentioned his name.
They told me that it would be more like Panda than it is Penguin, i.e. it's more of a dampener than a filter.
Well, no, it's also more of a page quality scoring than it is about, cheating the algorithm or whatnot. You know what I mean? It's more of a page quality issue. It's not Penguin kind of lies between the manual penalty for links and. So, yeah, definitely. But I think they're all dampeners at the end of the day because it's not kicking you out of the index. Well, yeah, because manual actions are what really fuck you, so.
Yeah, but I think Penguin, I found with Panda, you can still, let's say it's not as drastic and you get out of it a lot faster. I've seen Penguin, once you've got it, it's very, people who say they beat it, they did a lot of work to beat it. It's not simply just clean it up and continue as normal. You have to make a concerted effort to basically get back the equity that you lost. It'll be harder to get that equity than it was in the past.
Steve, do you think this lies in the same considerations as the ones around, how much do I focus on Google Local? Doesn't that, also seem to be sort of synonymous with this? To a degree?
Well, that's, here's what's kind of out there. And we can talk about that later, actually. That's more related to a topic we're going to talk about in the news. But Yeah, I don't think it's going to be as harsh as what they said. I think it'll affect a lot of sites, but I don't think it'll be a penguin effect, if you know what I mean. Like penguin, when you got hit, you got hit.
Thanks, Steve. Anyways, yeah, in the consideration process of making moves or making changes, does it, again, if I service things internationally from a website, et cetera, like a lot of people do that don't have a physical location that you can go to, does mobile really become that big an issue?
No, and that's why I was saying, it's more of an analytics-driven decision, because I mean we've got clients that are 70+% mobile. We've got clients that are 5% mobile, and the guys that are 5% mobile just don't care, and they shouldn't, because it will have zero effect on their website and their traffic and their business
until there's an opportunity to fix it or do something about it.
It's not even seen as an opportunity to fix it. It's simply a non-business event. Their customers don't use mobile devices for various reasons.
Could be one in, couple.
No, I still have clients and sites, Terry, that are like 80% desktop. You know what I mean? So again,
agreed.
Not the client I'm going to tell, like, let's revamp the freaking template just to do this. I'm not so sure I would. I would obviously explain to them what the ramifications are and how it works, but after, I wouldn't be as insistent on it as, let's say, somebody who's getting 50% mobile.
Right, but I'm just saying that's now, right? That could change. There's cycles on PCs. There's people who change them every couple of years. There's people who change them every 3 or 4 years, and there's people who are still on, Windows 3.1. Hey, I've seen it.
Really, still?
Still out there. You know what I'm saying, right? So what I'm saying is if, say, for instance, I was in the CSS and, I was doing something there already. Why not look at that, what I'm doing, and saying, how mobile friendly is that? And while I'm doing that, can I update this? Right? That's where I'm at, Steve.
But it also falls, you can look at stuff like schema, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things you could do if you're going to live in a perfect world. I think you just have to weigh the pros and cons of it in the situation. So, again, I'm just trying to give some useful advice for the listeners, for the watchers, et cetera.
For us, it's all ROI. If there's no return on it, so there's not even any point of even thinking about it. So, but there are people who are going to get absolutely hammered by this, and they're going to go, "Well, I don't understand what happened." It's like, well, you were being told for months that this was coming, and you needed to make a decision, and you failed to make that decision.
And which is an interesting point, Steve. You could almost wait post-mobile get-in and see what, if any, effects happen.
Yep. I have one client that I am 100% confident that's what's going to happen. Is they're not going to do anything until after the update, and then the update's going to take away 40% of their traffic, and they're going to freak out.
Right, like a Penguin or a Panda or anything else. People tend to react after the case and go, "Well, I lost a bunch of traffic. What happened?" And, well, here's what happened.
Yeah, but if it works like how I think it does, and it drops your client from 1 to 3, is that really a big deal?
It can be, for sure, dude. Oh, for sure. Click bias? Yep.
Yeah, but if it's 1 to 3, right, it's still in view of the person, right? They're, not everybody.
Well, again, Terry, everything's situational. How big a moneymaker was that term?
Right, that's what I mean.
Was that term bringing, 80% of your, 60% of your traffic, then it's a big deal. If that term dropping 1 to 3 is like, point whatever, then no, obviously.
Right, yeah, that's why I think maybe Steve has taken the right note, and how we usually say to do things right, Dave, is go ahead and let them play their game, right? Because that's what they're trying to do. Why do they give so much time in advance? It's to make all the posers out there run around
what was the last one, guys?
Wasn't
the last one HTTPS? and that was going to like destroy things. And most my clients haven't seen a difference. And
how about speed? How about speed?
Yeah, same thing. Yeah.
Right?
So yeah, it could be an event, it could be a non-event. I guess we're not going to know until it hits.
There's ranking factors, and then there's non-ranking factors, right? So in other words, if you're the slowest ass page on the internet, speed makes a difference. But if you're a tenth of a millisecond behind, the number one placement, do you think it really matters? No. I mean, like, people don't understand the way they're measuring this is not even noticeable sometimes to a human. Like, just saying.
I always assumed the page speed thing was more of a reducing Google's costs and bandwidth than it was for anything else.
Or it makes things more convenient for them.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you can increase the overall internet speed by 10% by telling people speed is a ranking factor, how much money, how many millions of dollars does that save them a year in just bandwidth charges?
Yeah, but they pay the same, wouldn't they? Rather they push it down. Whether you take it faster or not doesn't really matter.
No, yeah, but every cycle has a cost, you know what I mean?
Okay,
so the more cycles you're burning, the more you're spending,
Okay.
Even your hydro fucking bill at the end of the day, you know what I mean? So
it's also about resending packets and stuff too.
Yeah, so I'm sure, man, it all has a cost to that size.
Well, some of the stuff that they tell you to do to speed up the page is actually has to do with reducing the number of drop packets.
Yeah, but then they ask you to put code bloat in with all kinds of code in this and that. So, the left and the right hand are telling you to do different things.
Yeah, and what's the slowest app on your web page? Probably Google Analytics.
Or if you're putting like semantic markup for their rich snippets or et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Well, rich snippets not a big deal. It's no more than putting a link tag in. But GA actually is doing remote calls to a server, so that is overhead. And why, when you people put that in the head of your document, you don't know how things work.
It's weird. Google even tells you to put it. Google even tells you to put it right before the closing body tag.
Yeah, well, that's the wrong place to put it because that does not measure traffic properly.
No, at the bottom of the body tag.
If I back out of the page before it renders it, it still counts it.
He didn't catch that, did he, Steve? No. I was saying, Terry, I was saying Google actually tells you to put it the closing body tag, meaning after the page is loaded.
No, they don't. They tell you to put it out just before the head tag.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. They used to say put it in the body of the thing.
I haven't read it in a while, so I just go by my instincts.
I actually found something somewhere where it discussed that and a few other things.
Michael Van Keats is asking if we've ever heard of link risk, and yes, we have heard of link risk. It's our good friend Dom Hodgson's tool, so I guess we're kind of biased, so we're going to leave it there.
Yep, since he's their dojo member.
Yeah, we really can't say anything other than it's awesome.
Well, we'd say it's awesome, or as good as anything else out there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, sorry, Michael. Yeah, I've played with it, and I was in the beta with it because of him being a member and everything else. Yeah, it's as good as anything else out there. It's better than most of them.
Yeah, I would put it in that.
But at the end of the day, when you're dealing with bad links, you need a human being looking at it. You can have a tool divide out for you shit like directories or whatever you might be interested in getting rid of, but I still think you need a person. So.
And it's also got some pretty smart people running the dealers, not just Dom. It's who's the partner there? Well-known British guy too, Dave. I forget his name now, but he's no dummy either.
So, Steve, what was this thing you were going to go into, but you're waiting until we got here?
Well, we were talking about Google's upcoming drama with EU, and then decided to go forward with monopoly charges. Um,
Please refresh the drama for those unfamiliar.
The European Union has a much stricter guideline when it comes to determining what is fair and what is not fair when it comes to monopolies than the United States does. So while in the United States they're definitely being hammered, or they're getting away with some stuff. In Europe, they're not. They're being held accountable for antitrust violations, is what they're calling it. When it comes to different things, such as placing their product above other products, and then Google released this rather ham-fisted reply saying, well, it's not really true that we're the only thing out there because you've got all these other options over here. Unfortunately, in Europe, especially in, I want to say Germany, Google's like 90%. They're way beyond what they are here. So they don't, saying that they could go to other searches is disingenuous at best. So I was talking about this with some other folks. We were trying to come up with scenarios where Google could resolve all of these issues cleanly and easily and never have it be a problem at all. And the obvious solution became, why not just make the crawl data open source? Let anybody who wants the crawl data have access to it, and let them do what they want with it. If they want to build another competing search engine with the crawl data, great. If they want to build a link evaluation tool with the crawl data, more power to them. But that gets the underlying power that's search out of Google's direct, well, it's still be in Google's direct control, but it gets it to where anybody can use it, and it balances the playing field for anybody who wants to use that data. You can no longer say Google has an unfair advantage, because you could just as easily build an identical search engine with that data.
Finance is willing.
Well, the other thing, they took real exception to the comparison shopping tools, the insurance and the, those things. And you'll notice they haven't done that in the United States. Or they just released insurance in the United States, did they not? There's also France, also a couple of days ago, announced that they're trying to make Google tell them what the algorithm is for search for kind of the same reasons they like.
Yeah, and I think the ranking algorithm is proprietary, and it should stay that way.
Yeah.
But the one thing you can give up easily without breaking anything at Google is the crawl data. And it's still going to limit the people who can actually use it successfully. But I mean, think of all the new industries that would open up immediately with that kind of big data available to everybody. Yeah, right. Zoe agrees. She thinks that's what it should be.
I just don't see it happening.
I don't see it happening either. I see them fighting it and paying fines, which could be significant. I mean, they're looking at up to $6.5 billion worth of fines. They've got the money to pay them. Yeah. So what do you do after that? Because at some point,
just indirect taxation. That's all it is.
And that's fine too. It's just when you look at things like the comparison engines. They did put a lot of companies out of business that were purely comparison search. And for those few companies, I can understand them being super furious about it. But as far as the flights and the insurance companies and all the other stuff, they're still getting their money. They're still getting paid. They're just getting paid by somebody else.
Yeah, but that also means that if you're not part of Google, you're not there, right? In other words, if you're not paying Google, you're not there. So it should be marked as like,
The issue becomes who gets included in the comparison search. Do you have to pay a monthly fee to be in it? Do you just automatically get included because you're in that industry?
So I bet you it's not a monthly fee. It might be a monthly fee plus so much per. Never looked into it.
They take, maybe it's a pay-per-click deal, and it just becomes another big freaking ad. I just keep going back to the original white paper that was put out when Google first formed it from Stanford that talked about how putting advertising in with search ruins search. I mean, that was the very first thing they said. I mean, it was in their appendix.
Yeah,
it was really that. Yeah, it's amazing. It was one of the
cornerstones. It was one of the cornerstones of their philosophy when they started.
Yeah,
when you
put it in pocket, all of a sudden their original ideology.
And isn't that where "Don't Be Evil" came from? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, but if they don't sell ads, they don't get as big as they are because that hardware and software costs money. They got 50,000 employees. How are they going to monetize? Huh?
There's plenty of things they could have done to be less abusive of the users, as far as
ads are abusive to users. Some ads are abusive to users. I agree. Comparison shopping is probably abuse. It's just, as we all know, the end game is that, using Google to comparison shop and shop for everything. So, don't be, I'm encouraged that they're saying, this ain't gonna fly. To me, that's important. All the rest is just indirect taxation. And which I believe they should pay it because it's, if you're in a country, you should pay them, not do everything you can to avoid paying it. That's why I have a lot of respect for a company like GE. They pay, they're going to bring 50 billion home and they're going to pay the tax on it at the real rate. Good on them. Not, could use the money. If I'm a GE stockholder, I'm not very impressed, though.
All right, well, where to next, boys? Michael is in the Q&A if anyone's looking. He said he's looking for a good link tool. Well, I think you can almost use these tools the same way, Michael, that once you identify bad links, what's left over are good links.
The best tool you have is between your ears.
Always has been.
Don't take any of them on there. You should review every link that they tell you. Some of them actually say a no-followed link can be toxic. How this happens, I have a hard time believing that one. Sorry, it just makes no sense.
I don't do a lot of link analysis anymore for a lot of reasons. So I'm not. I take casual glances at competitor links, but that's about it.
Well, unless you're penalized, I think it's not a big deal.
Or unless you're not, and again, unless you're doing something dodgy, you know what I mean? I've got clients that wouldn't know a link building campaign if it bit them in the ass, so they've got 10, 20, 100,000 links over the years by just producing good content and service. So they don't, those instances, I'm with you, Steve. I've never really been big into that other than when I'm doing forensic work or something like that. But on an ongoing basis with clients, it's been a long time since I really worried that much about links, other than, again, it's more a defensive thing than it is a proactive. If you're doing a good job with the content program, everything else, you should be garnering clean links anyways, other than maybe negative SEO. I don't think there's much for you to worry about.
Well, I think you have to worry about negative SEO.
Oh no, yeah, it depends who you are, and if you're a big enough target, I think you do for sure.
But you know, you don't need a tool for that other than Majestic. Just bring them in and have a look at them. Like, here's the thing: you got to understand that when you're reviewing these sites, if they're good sites that you should be on, you're going to get inspiration for other stuff that you can write about. You'll get ideas. I mean, like, you know, I guess people are too busy, you know, getting all their information and tools, and you know, no one really wants to do the real work that actually does something.
Didn't we also have a bit of a clusterfuck with I don't know,
Really?
I guess we could call it the search engine land crew, that they're all confused about Panda and Penguin and refreshes and stuff.
Well, because Google's not telling them. If Google doesn't tell them, they haven't really sat down to figure it out, Dave. Seriously. All they've done is be Google's mouthpiece. Right?
No, it's not true.
And the mouthpiece is gone.
They denied it many times.
That's what I hear. I hear crying and whining because they don't have an in to go to Google and say, tell us what you're doing. Right? That stopped. I wonder if that has anything to do with Mr. Cuts. You know, the relationship's gone. Now they have to do it like the rest of us. They seem to have a problem with it. Just my 2 cents, you know, that don't mean fuck all.
I also just didn't understand the drama, I guess, Steve. What's the difference if it's, you know, running on its own or if someone pushes a button? Who gives a fuck?
Well, the only difference is it gives somebody an opportunity to sneak in for a few days or weeks or months, take advantage of a hole in the algorithm, and then jump back out when it's being run versus continually. That's it.
Right. So unless you've got ulterior motives, the difference shouldn't make any difference to you.
But the way I see it, they're assuming that nothing's going on because they haven't been told. That's what I heard from that article. Isn't that what you were hearing, Dave? Or am I just so biased now that
ding, ding, ding.
I just take all negative from it? Would that have anything to do with it? Look at Steve fucking smiling like a mo. I guess I just hold people to standards. Same one I hold myself
Well,
to.
no, but after a while, they don't even, once they don't meet the standard enough times, I don't even think about them. Or, you know, it's kind of like, you know, all the love to learn and everything. It's kind of where search engine journals got to, you know what I mean? It's almost, you know, I'll use the word biased. I'm almost biased about anything that comes out of that place in a negative way. It's rare that I still go there and read things that, well, at least in my feed reader. But, you know, generally speaking, there's a bit of a bias. And I think at the end of the day, any of us that have been at this long enough and are serious enough with this shouldn't be getting information from any of these sites anyways. You know,
That's what here's what I see. In every article I've read about this, it's people whining because Google's not telling them how to do it anymore. Well, fuck, I did it for 15 years and nobody told me how to do a fucking thing. I figured it out on my own. We should go back to that. There'll be more people who actually know what they're doing because they had to work at it.
Not gonna happen, buddy. They love their tools. They love their tools. They love their push to big.
No, eventually that shit just ain't gonna work. That's my feeling. That if you just do what Google tells you to do, you're not gonna win. You're not gonna be successful.
Steve? Something? Anything?
I don't get worked up like Terry does. I don't see the point in it. I don't really care if they've got an inside or an outside source. I don't care if they are well investigated or not well investigated. it doesn't matter. The information's out there. It's not hard to find. You can do a little bit of work on your own. What's wrong with that? With using tools and things like that to get an advantage?
I use tools too, Steve. Like where it actually is necessary. Like I don't use tools to find a problem. I use tools to solve a problem. I think there's a difference. In other words, I'm not relying on tools to tell me what to do. I know what to do. I use the tools to verify that I'm doing it right.
Or to find the answers that you can't readily find through analytics or somewhere.
Right. Or it makes a task much easier to do, like link prospect.
Expedites the process.
My tool of choice. Because when I want information, I go to the SERP, I find the like posts, I find the information I want, and then I had to cut and paste it all into a CSV file. Now I just go run the same query through Link Prospector and boom, there's all the data in the CSV, cost me $1, right? Whereas that other thing would cost me an hour of my time. That's all I'm saying about it. Like, I'm not saying don't use tools. I'm saying, you know, like Screaming Frog, same thing. That tells me something that I can actually do something with, right? It shows me specifically what I have to fix. You know, something that, you know, tells me if I've been doing spam. Well, fuck, I should know that. That's my job.
Well, I kind of wandered. We went from the Google push button to the SEO push button. Wow, I like it. All right. La 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 la. Okay, yeah, we just did that one. So retarded. Oh, I'll get to that one in a bit. Actually, let me go look at some of Terry's stuff here. Hold on. What about the stock split? Okay, you guys know this stuff better than me. Terribly sorry, folks. I don't know shit about this stuff.
It's old news, first of all.
Stock split could cost Google more than 5. Well, yeah, well, Terry had it up there from about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it happened shortly after the last show. When Google, and here's the thing, this is not just gonna, this happened one time, but it's gonna cost these people who invested in these shares. They're gonna keep lagging, and you know, they knew that probably when they released it. Like, okay, so Google created another class of shares, and
we'll back up. Go ahead.
Pardon me?
I was just going to say, let's go back and fill in the whole story in case anybody cares.
Yeah.
When Google had their stock split, what they did was to keep from diluting Larry and Sergey's stocks so that they would maintain control of the company, they created a new class of non-voting shares. So if you had 100 shares of voting stock, you still had your 100 shares of voting. They split your stock, and so you got 100 shares of non-voting stock to go with your 100 shares of voting stock, which didn't give you any more votes. It just doubled the number of shares you had, and that allows Larry and Sergey to stay in control. Well, a lot of people said that these non-voting shares are not going to be worth as much as voting shares, and the owners said, oh, no, pshaw, it'll be fine. If there's more than an X% difference between the two stock prices, at the end of a year, we'll pay the difference. Well, there is more than that percentage, and they're going to pay the difference to the tune of about $600 million, which really isn't a lot of money to maintain control of Google. I don't have a problem with it. They own it.
Yeah, but I paid that. You know, it's like paying yourself, Steve. And here's the thing, that's not just going to be a one-time thing. These shares dual shares always trade like that. That's why a stink was put up about it. So basically, they still maintain control of the company, but they don't really have all the shares to do it. And it's called two classes of shares. It's never worked for any company that's done it. And, you know, the people who bought them are going to continue to lag for that reason. So it's not just a 1 year thing. It's forever. It's not going to be that much every year, but it is going to be a second class of stock that trades at a lesser value. Might only be $1 or so, but, you know, it all adds up.
Right. But technically there are 3 classes of shares, because the original founders shares voted 10-to-1 of regular shares, which vote significant, you know, and then the new shares are 0 votes. So I understand it from a business owner point of view, wanting to maintain control of the company, and then I also understand it from a shareholder point of view. Why would you want to buy shares in a company that you can't influence? Which on the other side of that coin is, you know, that you bought shares in that company because of how they operated. Why would you want to mess that up? So there's a lot of complex issues. I'm fine with what they did.
Yeah, but it means
their accountants were very smart.
The bad part is, say tomorrow Google could say, yeah, that all that money we have in the bank, well, we want to start building our autonomous cars, so we're going to spend it all on that.
Okay. And their stock price will plummet the next day.
Right. Again, so that's why people, you know, that's why those second class, that's why multi-classes of shares is a bad idea. And in the end, it stops institutional investors from investing in the company. Know that, because that was, in Canada, that's a big thing, that the families, that's how they retain control of the companies, and why you don't see much of that in the United States, where, you know, the guy who founded the company being dead for 20 years, but the family is still in charge. Anyhow, Dave looks thoroughly bored, so let's move on.
No, hey, go right ahead, man. Passing time.
Hey, and while we're talking stocks real quick, if you have an Etsy store, Etsy's going to be IPOing in the not too distant future, and they're giving people who are members of Etsy who have stores an opportunity to buy $2,500 worth of pre-IPO stock.
Wow.
They're not the first ones to do it, but they're the first ones to make a big noise about it. But apparently not everybody's been given the offer. But if you've got an Etsy store, and you got $2,500 to play around with, why not?
Yeah, but lately those IPOs have, you know, gone up very quickly.
We're providing value around here now, boys. And Terry, I wouldn't be surprised to see their banner hanging on the wall behind Steve next week. So.
Yeah, we should approach them. See, we already gave you a free pitch.
Freebie, pro bono, yeah, you're getting that one on the house. I guess before we get going on the next story, Michael's back, and he says, so you think Link Prospector is better than Link Risk? And again, Terry, I'll let you answer that, but I think they're actually two different tools for 2 different jobs, right?
Yeah.
You want to explain it to Michael?
Collects the links that are on a cert for a given keyword. Very good for blogger outreach, where Link Risk is pretty good at analyzing links.
I would say not even blogger outreach is just primarily, but I think it's also a good way to see which kind of articles, which kinds of content, which types of approaches are garnering links. You know, I think Link Prospector is good for that.
And if you're not real good with forming the queries, that's where Link Prospector is got presets to do a number of things. Like, say you wanted to find people to include in, 25 of the top experts on SEO, and they don't include me, Dave, and Steve, stuff like that. Whereas with Link Prospector, you probably would get. Steve, Dave, and I.
Not these days, man. We're old.
Not Steve, no, because Steve
Oh, wow.
runs under the radar. Steve runs under the radar.
I don't need the fame. I want the money.
Yeah, you got the fortune. You got the good part.
All right, what is next? Dun, 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 dun. Apparently, I don't know why this came up this morning in the room, and Terry, you had it as a note, so why not? Good friend Jan Willem Bobnik, Bobbink, and Dojo member, was talking about Yandex will start pushing paid links as a negative ranking factor or signal. I don't think the person. I don't even like how this is written, Terry. Yandex will start using paid links as a negative ranking signal. I don't even think the person who wrote this gets fucking search engines, because it's a scoring factor, or signal is totally different than factors. But anyways, all right. So
I think he didn't want to make it sound like it was a factor, because it's semi.
Yeah. Again, I had this conversation with him in the dojo earlier today, and I just don't see it as that interesting, in the sense that that's kind of behind Google. It's not really new.
Well, I thought it was interesting that they turned links off, right? That didn't work. So they said, oh, let's turn them back on, but we'll make spam negative. Or, excuse me, paid links negative. Remember, their situation isn't the same as it is over here, Dave. If you read, they have more of a problem with paid links than spam content.
What? In the Eastern Bloc? Really?
Oh, yeah.
No way.
You don't say.
Yeah.
Next thing you tell me is they got a malware problem, too. Come on.
Well, there's that, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying, right?
Oh, yeah,
It's just a different animal. So, but it does prove that, Google's probably never going to stop using links, but they are going to try and adjust the links that they're using, which kind of, validates what Google did as far as, the penguin and panda stuff goes.
In the conversation I had with Jan in the chat room this morning was that, Google could identify these things. They just took another route, which is the one that Steve and I have always had a contention with, which is spanking things, making things public, penalties, as opposed to just devaluing them and throwing them out in the garbage like they probably should have. So, again, Steve, I know we've beaten this up so many times, and I've even talked to Matt about it, or whoever, and that'll listen, that to say that you need to spank webmasters to get the point across, I understand it. But how did we get here? Because SEOs realized, okay, these kind of crappy links rank a website. So if those kind of crappy links stopped ranking websites,
they'll stop.
SEOs would figure it out as well. No, they'd be like, okay, fine, this doesn't work anymore, let's go on to something else. I don't think the whole spanking thing, because again, it only affects the website owner, not the fucking SEO. So really.
But that's who I think they are addressing that stuff too, as the owners. Like they basically were saying, don't hire people unless you're sure that they're not shady.
If Yandex is truly just going to dampen stuff that they believe is paid, that's the way it should always be. So that kudos to them. Props to them, because I think that's the way it should always be.
They're using it as a negative factor. As soon as you put a value on it, right? If it can do negative, if they start doing negative, that means
right. You can go and buy ads against you
for my competitors.
Right. It should just discount them totally, as opposed to either penalizing or dampening. I'm with you. I agree totally, buddy. Yeah.
Because if you give any value to them. Once you give them a value, either positive or negative,
it'll be abused.
Used negatively, right?
Yep.
Either way. So if it's bad links, just ignore them. That's the only way you can make it so people can't do negative. I don't think it's right to do that, because I'm not in control of someone else's ethics. And it's not against the law to do it, is it? Would that be against the law, Steve? To buy someone else advertising?
Nope.
unless you kind of acted like you were them, right? In other words, that would be fraud, not...
No, because fraud is trying to deceive a consumer.
Right.
So that's not even fraud, Terry.
Well, I'm
defamation of character is, talking smack about someone. I'm not sure there's any law that would really cover that.
Oh, yeah, talking smack in the U.S., I got sued for it. You can be. Believe me, you can be.
Right, so what I'm saying, though, is buying negative advertising or putting out crappy links against a competitor to manipulate Google to cause their business grief. I'm not sure if there's even a law to cover that at this point. I don't think there is. Not that I've heard of.
Yandex, so, unless you're in Russia, it doesn't really matter.
No,
Probably
you
not.
just call your local mafia guy and let him go over and deal with it.
Yeah.
Go ahead and break some fingers.
Break some fingers.
You will never be able to click a mouse again.
So, we kind of, you want to handle that, Dave? What we kind of talked about a bit, or do you think we talked about it enough and just leave it?
Yes, go ahead and talk.
Search engine.
Before we break your fingers, before we break your fingers, let's do it. What, as far as filters and signals and bullshit?
Yeah, the whining.
Go ahead. I think it's educational. I'm tired of the conversation myself, but I think it's something that our listeners probably could use. So I don't. Well, I think we should. I have no problem going there.
So here's the thing. I find it hard to call some Panda a filter, because a filter generally means that it's being filtered off. Right or wrong? That's what it meant to me in the past, was if you were being filtered, you weren't going to be found in the results at all. Whereas if you were dampened, that just meant you would probably be lower.
Again, a filter is more along the line of not being relevant to a given query. You know what I mean? We're filtering this out because it's not relevant. We're filtering that out. Again, if we look at the old Jaguar, right? So if someone says Big Cat Jaguar as opposed to Jaguar in a search engine, they're going to filter out the car. They're going to filter out the NFL team. They're going to filter out certain things because it's not relevant anymore to the query. So filtering things is kind of like that. Dampening and boosting things is something totally different. You know what I mean? If you're dampening something, you know, if the final scoring is, whatever number, you're dampening it by a factor of 3 or dampening it by whatever, which will demote it down the results, but it's still in those results. It hasn't been filtered out of those results. But it's not filtered out of the index, it's just filtered out of a given query because it's not deemed relevant to that query.
So as examples, Panda is probably more of a dampener than a filter, where Penguin is definitely a filter because it removes the page entirely.
No, it'd still be a dampener because, you're still ranking. You're still in that query response set. You're just lower than you would have been naturally. You're lower than you would have been naturally, so you've been dampened. You've been demoted, right? Whereas a filter would just take you out of that query results set altogether because you're deemed not relevant.
All of that was kind of not really. He was calling Panda and by he I mean Danny Sullivan was calling Panda and Penguin filters when they're just dampeners.
Correct. That is correct.
Well, isn't that kind of like a big deal? Like, there's a difference between a dampener and a filter.
I don't know if the average freaking numbnuts, in the industry really knows the difference. It's the same. Same thing when I get pissed off. How many times do you and I get freaked out when we see the word signal instead of scoring or ranking factor?
Or ranking factor on a signal, and Steve's going to sleep. Sorry, buddy. I know this. But it is, for me, right, I care about the industry. I care about that the people in this industry, if it's going to survive, they got to get better information. Right? Do we agree on that?
It's like calling a circular saw a drill. You know what I mean? If you don't understand the core concepts of the things that make search engines work, what are you doing here?
So then Isn't that one of the biggest problems with the industry? Is that the places that everybody sees as resources, they're not so hot.
Well, you know, in its semi-defense, it's a fucking news site, and again, I wouldn't be trusting any of my decisions to any of these places. You know, it's anecdotal news that I might follow up on my own testing and observations or things of that nature, but I don't think, you know, I think we talked about this earlier in the show, that I really don't think you should be taking any of these places verbatim and basing what you do based on that.
But isn't that partially why people don't go out and actually learn these things themselves?
I think it's partially that, partially they're just fucking lazy. You know, it goes back to the tools discussion. It goes back to the tools discussion, Terry. They want to push a big red button and have it done for them. You know, they just want to push that fucking big red button. So.
Right, okay. I just don't think people are that lazy. I think we make them that lazy by spoon-feeding them Google crap.
I think there's laziness. There's other things. I don't know about you guys, but I can't count how many people I've talked to over the years that when I talk about tools, they go, "Oh yeah, Dave, I understand, I know, but that's what my clients want, like ranking reports and things like, you know." And people always fall back, and this is what my clients want. So I think that laziness is born from that as well. That there is an inherent.
There's also a deep reluctance, Dave. You know, I feel the same way, but I got a client that I can't get them to pay attention to anything else.
You know, I know perfectly good search geeks that I say, check this patent out, and they go, "I'll just wait for Bill to write about it." You know, they don't want to spend the time to learn and read.
It's one thing to, like, I do that. I read what Bill talks about, right?
At least you do that.
I just don't read it. I then go and look at what I'm doing and compare it to that. Like, what am I doing compared to what Bill has told me this patent is about?
Steve, do you think the vernacular plays an important role?
Vernacular. I'm sorry. Steve's really looking for
terminology. I'm just, you know, Steve, you're muted, dude. You're muted. You're muted, Steve. You're muted.
Sorry, I had to mute because the birds were going batshit crazy. Yeah, much. I find these types of pedantic arguments incredibly boring.
Yeah.
The end result is filter or dampener. The end result is you're not getting traffic. What we call it is completely irrelevant to me.
You see, and I understand that. That's what I think most people tell me. So.
But I think if you know the difference, if you know it's a dampener, right, you're going to approach it differently than if you know it's a filter, especially if you know the difference between the two.
No, you're going to look and see what's causing the problem, and you're going to fix the problem.
Right. Okay.
I mean, that's in the end, that's all it is. And what we call it, I honestly don't care. Scholars can argue those kinds of things if they want, but I have absolutely no desire to waste time.
And I can agree with that to a large degree, Steve, for sure. You know, just in my world, because I'm, you know, kind of always been into that element. You know, I think the ability of understanding, at least to a degree, you know, maybe not this finite a degree, but at least to a degree how a search engine works, I think should be something that's prerequisite for anyone who wants to do this. But I don't think you have to get as anal about it. But.
For me, it's like for me, it's more than a business, right? I want to see it become a real industry and get the recognition that it deserves and needs to be able to do what we do properly. And I just think the standard's far too low, and so we don't get any respect. You know, that's like, you know, the chef in a good restaurant gets respect because, right? The guy on the line in a no-name restaurant could be just as good, but he's not going to get as much respect.
I suppose.
All right, before we roll out of here, Scotty Donovan's asking if we all have any follow-up thoughts on the mysterious early February e-commerce update, which I have no knowledge of.
Think of it as quite possibly doorway page update beginnings.
Oh, okay.
I think with e-commerce, you got to really watch how you're setting your interior pages up with links and how you deal with how you set up your site. Because here's the thing, if you're like, I don't know, I just looked at that, and to me, what they're calling a doorway page is not what I think of as a doorway page, because those are orphan, right? Whereas these are not orphan pages, right? Because one of the things that really stuck out in my mind was that they said if you had a general topic, for instance, for widgets, right? And then you had a page specifically for widgets in Miami, right? Or blue widgets, right? With no real added value. That could possibly come under what they're calling a doorway page. And there was a specific numbered thing that they mentioned that basically said if you have a generic page and then you have a more, that we're going to see that second page as the long tail thing as not a page we really want in the index. So we're going to demote it.
Yeah, I think we covered that doorway page a few weeks ago, didn't we, Steve?
That's when it was first announced.
I think they were kind of defined as, we were defining them as orphan kind of pages without navigation. Nothing, not the consistent boilerplate with the rest of the site.
And I would go on to say that there's rumblings about a panda or penguin that's been running for a little while. People are noticing, pages that are dropping. Well, I would say, instead of looking at panda or penguin, look at the doorway stuff and really think to yourself, find the article on what they classified as a doorway page and see if you line up on more than one of those things. If you do, I would say start there to find the problems. That's just me, though.
I like it. Well, Steve, do you know of any other mysterious February e-commerce updates?
No.
Yeah, I'm guessing hopefully it was the doorway thing. Sorry, Scotty, we're not entirely sure what we're looking for here.
And you got to remember, too, Dave, that we thought we had an e-commerce thing when Panda first rolled out. Remember that?
Yeah, what you first perceive and what it really is, you never know.
And that was pre-Panda by what, 6 weeks?
Yeah, about a month.
We started noticing that stuff.
Yeah, it was January, and I think it came out February, 16th or something.
No, it was May, I believe, actually.
Was it May? Okay.
Or May, my mind.
No, 4 years ago, dude.
Yeah. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, so.
All right, folks. Well, there you go. Oh, sorry. Did you have something to throw there at the end, brother?
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you see things like that, don't think of it's an e-commerce thing, because very seldom does Google go after that kind of thing. Even what seems like the payday update, right? Where it was just targeted at payday loans, they were just doing that more than everybody else. So it looked like it was targeted at them. Google does not have the time with billions of pages on the internet to target specific industries. I just don't see that. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'd agree there. You know what I mean? A perception of what's happening and the reality are usually different things.
Yep.
All right, gentlemen. Good fun as always. We survived it for another week. Well, folks listening at home on the podcast, or those of you watching here with us this afternoon, thank you very much for dropping in. Terry, Steve, say goodbye.
Good week, everybody.
Yep, go make lots of money doing them doorway pages.
I knew it. See, Steve, I knew it was going to be doorway pages. And something
I make a lot of money with doorway.
All right, everyone, take care. We'll see you next time.